Hello, we will see in this video how to enter timesheet and expenses in Abak 360. There are two different ways to enter time in Abak. The detailed input, which contains all timesheets recorded in Abak. This is the right place where to delete, edit, regardless where they were entered. The second one is the fast entry mode, which is a grid containing shortcuts that allow you to register time on your favorite contracts and activities. Let's start with the detailed input. To enter a timesheet in Abak, click on the plus sign icon. Select the client by clicking on the drop-down menu, then a list of active clients appears. You can scroll down the list using the scroll bar and move to the previous or next page with the arrows. To go faster, do not open the client drop-down and instead just type in some characters of the client name or number, and then all records matching the strings of characters are presented. Pick the right one, then open the project drop-down menu. All projects belonging to that customer are displayed. To go even faster, you can skip the client, jump directly to the project. Because the client is blank, when you click on the drop-down list, all the existing projects shows up. Type in some characters of the project name or number, and all the records matching the strings of characters are presented. Pick the right project and then the client is automatically populated. If the project is phase-oriented, an additional field appears just under the project field. Select the desired phase and move on to the description field. If you can't find the phase you are looking for, it is likely that you and your function have not been assigned by the manager. If after choosing the phase, the activity or expense, the department, and the pay code are shaded, it is because the manager has restricted these items. If the project does not use the phases and the activity pops up by itself, it probably means that the manager has set it up that way. The department, activity, expense, as well as the pay code can be set by default. If an activity does not appear, it may be because it is assigned exclusively for the use of one or some functions different from yours. By default, the description field contains the description of the task just above. It is possible to change this description or to complete it. This description is recorded on this timesheet and may or may not appear on the customer invoice, depending on the decision made by the administrator. If you need more room, the Note tab can store as much text as you want. As described, the notes appears on the timesheet and can be displayed on the detailed invoice format if desired. The reference field is 45 characters wide. It is not printed on the standard timesheet report, but it could be added by customizing it if need be. The department usually shows up automatically. In some situation, you may have to change it. For example, if you are working for another department and the management wants to track it. It is also possible that this field, as well as some others in the screen, is invisible or grayed out if set up as such by the system administrator. The pay code is usually displayed by default. It can be changed for timebanks management or other purposes. It can have a multiplier effect on the cost and/or selling rate. The field print detailed on invoice determines whether the contents of the note will be printed on the invoice or not. This is only possible with the detailed invoice format. The default setting of this feature is usually set by the system administrator and should not be changed unless you have received such instruction. The checkbox Affect Time Bank should always be left as it is by default, unless told otherwise by your administrator. The User-Defined Field tab can contain additional information that management wants to collect. Under the Worked section, you can enter the number of hours worked, in hours or days, or the start time, end time, and the launch duration. In the Billable section, it is possible to determine whether the transaction is billable or not. If you are granted this access in the security, you can see and/or edit the billable amount. At the lower left-hand side of the screen, the transaction status is shown for both the approval and billing levels. A timesheet can be edited as long as it is not approved and remains in treatment, and therefore not in the billing process. When all information has been completed, click OK to save and close the window, or apply to save while leaving the window opened. You can duplicate a timesheet without being in the transaction details screen. Simply click on the duplicate icon and fill in the information. To quickly duplicate timesheets for the same project and the same activity, but on different days, click Batch Duplication and simply enter the number of hours made for each day. Each number entered in the cells becomes a transaction. Two other ways to enter time are presented in the Other section below. On the left-hand side, the calendar determines the month displayed. A red square surrounds the current date. The date displayed in light blue indicates your selection. This date is used by default when you create a new time entry or a new expense. To enter multiple transactions for a given date, click on that date in the calendar in the first place. The days in the calendar are displayed in different colors, depending on the approvals that have been completed. You will find the color legend by clicking on the legend icon. The Preview section determines which transactions are presented in the grid above: 1 day, 1 week, or the whole month. If you work more often on some projects, the Projects tab next to the calendar allows you to create shortcuts. Click on the plus button to add shortcuts. Once the shortcut is created, simply drag and drop the clock icon of the selected project on the date, and the timesheet details screen pops up. Do the same thing to log an expense, but rather use the money icon. Then complete with the amount and expense. Once a project is finished, you can remove it from your shortcuts by clicking on the Remove button. You can add and remove as many projects as you want. This does not affect the transactions already entered. If your rights give you access, you can also open the project detail by clicking on the View Project icon located on the right-hand side. Click on Synchronize Project or the Refresh icon to update, and you will see all the projects you've been assigned. You can enter time and expenses the same way we just saw on the Project tab. If no projects appears, it probably means that the system administrator does not use this feature. If your company assigns employees to projects in Abak, the Assignments tab displays the projects you are assigned. Similarly, you can quickly create a transaction on those projects by dragging and dropping the timesheet or expense icon on a calendar date. Finally, the Approval by Employees tab shows you which day have been approved and by whom. To log an expense, click on the plus sign expense. The information in the General section is similar to the one on the timesheet. In the Payable section, enter the quantity and cost per unit. Quantity or rate may appear by default if it has been set as such in the expense profile found in the reference tables. If tax included is checked, enter the total amount, otherwise enter the amount before tax. Both the checkbox and the taxes could be editable or not, depending on how the system manager set it up. If editable, the tax amount can be changed if they do not match those on the bill. The refundable checkbox is always checked by default unless this expense is not refundable to the employee. It's unchecked when we want to charge the client for mileage done with a company car. The billable checkbox determines whether this expense is billable to the customer or not. If an expense is related to a timesheet, it is possible to quickly enter it by clicking on the icon within the same window. From this window, you can add an expense by clicking the plus button. Since the client and the project are the same, you only need to enter the expense, the amount, and the rate. In addition, you can enter a hot list of your most commonly used expenses by clicking Default Expenses Types. Simply tick the ones you want to see in your hot list. Then, click on the appropriate one and complete the information in the lower part of the screen. The refresh button lets you refresh the data on the screen. The Excel icon lets you export the grid in an Excel form. The summary icon presents the hours entered for that day on which you are positioned in the schedule below, that week and that month. It also provides the time entered per pay period and your time banks balances. If a project is set by phases, you can review the phases of it by clicking the phase review icon. The color legends show you visually what days are approved. You cannot add, edit, or delete transactions recorded on a day approved. The print icon lets you print your timesheet or your expense account for the desired period. If you check the final version before you print it, this period is then locked, which informs your approvers that you have completed your timesheets. As long as no approver has approved timesheets over your approval, you can disapprove them and make changes, unless this right is not granted to you through your security profile under option Disable Approval. In this case, once you use the final version, you can no longer make changes unless you or an approver, intermediate or final, unlocks this period. The document management icon allows you to attach documents to a timesheet and or an expense account. In our example, we will link a taxi receipt to an expense transaction. First, it's necessary to highlight the relevant transaction and then click the document management icon. To add one, you must click on the plus icon and then type in the title you wish the document to have. The document type is a field like groupings used to categorize the documents. These can be set in the reference tables in the section Other. The state allows you to render the document private or public depending on its use. By default, documents are available to all corporate entities, but it can be defined otherwise. The tab Initial Version allows you to upload the document. Thereafter, the green down arrow allows you to view the document online. Note that it is possible to attach all documents to your expense report, and to do this, you must check the field Attach Documents under the print icon. The grid can be customized. By clicking on the arrow that appears when you put your cursor at the right end of a column header, you can add or remove columns in the grid. It is also possible to move the columns and to sort information on a given column. Finally, it is possible to get more space by closing the side and bottom panels. By right-clicking on the grid, several options are available. Default configuration resets the grid and set it up as it was when you first installed Abak. Show the grouping bar lets you add breakdowns by dragging the headers you want to have a break on. It is also possible to remove the columns to eliminate a break, move it to change its order, and hide the bar combination. Hide filters turns the search fields off. Collapse all and expand all is used to display or not the details. This completes the detailed input. Now let's see the fast entry mode. This is just a different view, allowing you to quickly enter timesheets through shortcuts of your favorite project and task. Note that these entries are added to your detailed input transactions. They can therefore be viewed, modified, or deleted from this module. This grid displays 1 week at a time, determined by the day on which you are positioned in the calendar. Simply add your favorite combinations by clicking on the plus sign. For example, vacation found under the admin project. Choose your most commonly used project and activities you'd like to add to your shortcuts. You are therefore ready to enter time by typing the number of hours for each day on the appropriate line. Then click Apply. On Saved, a number of hours is saved in a box. You can right-click on it and display the detail, for example, to add a note. When you're done with a project and/or activity, you can delete this line of your favorites with the delete icon. This does not delete the hours previously entered through the grid. The timesheet listed on this line and every hour of the week for which there is no shortcut are simply moved on the line items excluded from the list. The Approval by Employee tab shows you the days that are approved. The Error List tab shows you if some transactions cannot be created as requested. This could occur if, for example, some of the days on which you register time are approved, or you are not assigned to this project. Thank you for your time and have a good day.